What's up, RotoGrinders? Welcome to another edition of FanDuel Friday. I am your host, TJ Zwarych, joined by my good friend Justin Carlucci, TheRealLuuch. How you doing, my man?
Good. We are in peak college basketball March Madness season, but we're gonna have to find some time to squeak in some NBA on a Friday where there's only a billion questionable players. So that's always fun.
Like you said, you're right on. We got Jason Tatum, Steph Curry, Kyrie Irving, Rudy Gobert, Jeremy Grant, all listed as questionable today still as the time that we record. So we're going to be ripping through this video nice and quick, talking mainly strategy. This is exciting though, Luch. This is the second last FanDuel Friday for NBA before we start mixing in the baseball FanDuel Fridays as well. MLB season is back. Very exciting stuff. But for today, we're still focused on the NBA. It's a weird slate. We still got a lot of Q tags, and some of the Q tags that we have are guys like Jason Tatum, Boston and Portland. This game's at 10 p.m. Eastern time. Who knows when we're going to get this news? Kyrie Irving facing the Lakers, 10:30 Eastern time. Who knows when we're going to get this news? The Steph Curry game is at 7:30 Eastern time, so we should get this one in advance. And that is the first one that I want to touch on because we have a huge total. 122 for the Golden State Warriors, 126 for the Atlanta Hawks. Got to be one of the highest totals we have seen this season. If Steph Curry does sit on the heels of his 50-point game, Klay Thompson, Dante DiVincenzo look like two of the strongest plays on the slate. We're already without Draymond Green for this one, making Kevon Looney, DiVincenzo, even a guy like Jonathan Kuminga look a little bit better. But if Steph's out, like Jordan Poole is just going to be one of the very top plays on the slate.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, him and Klay would both be in really good spots. But if Curry's healthy, I'm throwing some prop betting in here. Klay actually averages three or a little less, more than 3 points per game less on the road than his season average this year, which is strange. And then I looked across his career, and he does average over a point per game less on the road, which might not seem like a lot, but he's so consistent, usually. And his, percentages are down a little bit across the board. So interesting stuff there. Like if Curry plays and everyone's kind of healthy there, guard wise, I might have interest in looking at some Klay Thompson unders, even though the matchup looks incredible against Atlanta. But you're right. If Curry's out for DFS purposes, you got to consider these guys for sure. Very fairly priced as well on FanDuel.
I'm playing probably like 1 to 3, maybe 1 to 2, but maybe 1 to 3 of DiVincenzo, Poole, and Klay in every single one of my lineups if Steph's out.
Like FanDuel's been so aggressively pricing players lately. What happened here? Even when they're all healthy, you just figured Klay would be 8K and Poole would be 8K kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. And so this is definitely going to be a standout spot. And then on the other side of this game, Trae Young and DeJounte Murray, reasonable run backs. I really like this spot for Clint Capella today because no Draymond Green. And so no Draymond Green means less likely that Golden State is going small, more likely Clint Capella can be staying on the court at that 5. Outside of him, though, I think the rest of this team is pretty appropriately priced. You can take shots on DeAndre Hunter, John Collins. I think they're fine. I just don't necessarily think they're spectacular by any means. The next team I want to touch on is Cleveland, just because Jared Allen is still out for this one. And so Washington don't look that great, but on the Cleveland side of things, Evan Mobley is looking basically like a cash game lock and one of the first plays you're putting into your cash game today, and still fine for tournaments as well. Minnesota has Rudy Gobert and Naz Reid questionable. If Rudy Gobert is out, Naz Reid is one of the very best plays on the entire slate. In the meantime, this is just a nice game environment, so people like Anthony Edwards and Kyle Anderson, they look fine regardless, even though Anderson's price is getting up there. But if you happen to see one of Naz Reid or Rudy Gobert out, I think that does increase the minutes you're going to see for a guy like Taurean Prince as well, and he can become a potential value On the Chicago side of thing, you have some potential value if Alex Caruso gets ruled out again with Ayo Dosunmu, Kobe White, Patrick Beverly. I think it's fine. It's nothing great. It's just fine. New Orleans and Houston, great game environment in this one. McCollum and Brandon Ingram, they seem fine. On the Houston side of things, Houston's been playing some really strong basketball recently, actually, and that's why you're seeing some of these prices increase here. Strong game environment, but the prices sort of match it. The next place that's a big focus, though, is going to be Memphis against San Antonio. San Antonio, one of the best possible matchups you can have in the NBA. Xavier Tillman, so heavily underpriced, coming in at nearly 70% projected ownership early in the day. Tyus Jones, a cash game lock at 6,700, and Desmond Bane looking like one of the strongest plays as well. How are you going to handle this Memphis chalk today?
I'm not playing Xavier Tillman at 68%. I'd rather just, like, I don't know, rub sandpaper on my eyes than do that. I just don't want to do it. That's such a big ownership number. And yeah, the matchup is awesome, but it's the NBA. There's so much damn variance that I'll just take the chances that he goes for pedestrian 5x. I could live with that or less. I mean, if it could be a really low scoring night based upon Xavier Tillman's productivity, which is crazy to say, but I would honestly take my chance, fade him for tournaments, see what happens. Got to lock him in at cash games if that ownership is true. Anything over 40% to me, if a guy's 40+% is pretty much a cash game lock for me, unless it's a really weird circumstance. So cash games for Tillman, I'm in. Tournaments, I'm out. Decent little way to hedge yourself there, in my opinion. I do have interest in Desmond Bane, for sure, but there's just so many intriguing spots on the slate. I know we're going to get to the Portland Boston game later, but even back to that Atlanta game, right? Like Trey Murray and DeJounte Murray should be carrying much more ownership. 126 team total. Golden State's so bad on the road defensively. I'd much rather try to get some contrarian value in that game, maybe with an incredible total there, TJ, than play a guy like Xavier Tillman. But what's Kevon Looney priced? Like similar? Is he a pivot? Something like that.
$500 more. I like that as a potential pivot. You have Jonathan Kuminga as the same price as Xavier Tillman. I agree with you. I think Tillman's a cash game lock. And then in tournaments today, I think you can basically full fade at that ownership. I mean, that could drop if we see more value coming throughout the day. And if that's the case, he'll still be a fine play again. But at this ownership, you can almost just hit the X button in tournaments and just hope he doesn't put up 35, 40 fantasy points. Because if he doesn't, you're probably going to be okay. On the San Antonio side, we're just going to have to wait and see. They don't have anybody on the injury report yet, but we always see things wonky with them as the day goes on. They never really play everybody. And so if everybody plays, Vassell looks like a strong point per dollar option. Zach Collins, I think, is somewhat interesting for tournaments, but that's going to be about it. Boston and Portland is going to be one of the most interesting spots on the slate because if everybody plays, the game's fine. It's a high total. It's a close spread. It's good for tournaments because nobody's playing anybody. Jeremy Grant's questionable on the Portland side. If he's out, Trendon Watford is going to become one of the better values on the slate. That's a potential pivot off of Xavier Tillman if we don't get that news. And then it would only enhance Damian Lillard out there as well. But the big news we're waiting on is on the Boston side of things. Jason Tatum is questionable. If Tatum is out, Brown becomes probably the best spend up on the slate. Al Horford becomes interesting. Derek White becomes more interesting. Brogdon, Marcus Smart, who's already a little bit underpriced at $5,600. All of these plays become quite interesting.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. They all do. Derek White would play like 35 minutes probably, which would be huge in a game against Portland, whose defense has been absolutely terrible, especially in the second half of the season. So I don't know. We're going to get this news at lock. So I'm all about rolling the dice, at least in one of your entries, to play some of this news. Have Jaylen Brown, maybe have Derek White. You could probably play them together in a stack if Tatum misses. It's just so many shots, so much usage to go around. And then you got Anthony Davis hanging out in that late game too. So if there's some value that opens up, You might even be able to figure out a swap with Anthony Davis in the late game, who's projected to come in pretty low. I know I'm jumping the gun a little bit there, but plenty of ways to go with Boston. It's not like they're playing, a rugged defensive team here. Like Portland's been a fantasy goldmine for opposing players. So,
and I think Marcus Smart is another good person to take shots on. You can even play him and Jaylen Brown or Derek White together. This is a guy that projects well with Tatum in right now, and he's picking up some ownership. But if Tatum happens to be out, he probably isn't going to have the ownership he deserves. You see he's got some low floor games here, but 4 for 12 shooting, 2 for 7, 4 for 12, 4 for 17, 4 for 13. He's in a bit of a shooting slump right now, and if he simply can just put the ball in the basket a little bit more, that price is way too low for him because he's probably going to get 3-4 rebounds. He's probably going to get 7-8 assists. And so if he has just an average shooting game mixed in with that, far too low of a price for Jaylen Brown today. For Marcus Smart today. You talked about Anthony Davis. If we have the value open up against Dallas, I think this is just a beautiful tournament play. Coming in super low owned. He's expensive. He's tough to get to, but if you can find the value, I love the Anthony Davis play today. I think Malik Beasley is somewhat interesting for tournaments. D'Angelo Russell is somewhat interesting for tournaments, but the main excitement here is on the Dallas side of things. Kyrie Irving is questionable. If Kyrie Irving plays 9,500, no Luka Doncic against the Lakers, this is a phenomenal spot for Kyrie Irving. 5% ownership right now. I don't want to have 30% Kyrie if he is playing today. And then if he happens to be out, these prices are going up. But Jaden Hardy and Josh Green, there is still meat on the bone, especially if Tim Hardaway Jr. Is out. 38, 41, 37 minutes the last 3 games for Jaden Hardy. Basically almost a floor of 5x, still putting up a 45-point game in one of those 3 here. And then Josh Green, 45, 27, 33 minutes, over 35 fantasy points in all 3 of those games. I think all 3 of those guys, both of those guys, still have some meat on the bone if Kyrie Irving is out, and especially if Tim Hardaway Jr. is out.
Yeah, if we get, like, even for cash games, and usually I prioritize ownership, I take that into consideration quite a bit when I'm looking to put guys into a cash game build. But if that news breaks after lock, I still think you're going to want to play either Josh Green or Hardy, because like you said, the minutes on the floor at that price, with the way FanDuel pricing has been for the most part, I think if we get that news after lock, I think I would try to swap one of those Dallas guys in at that mid 6.4 range kind of thing. I think they'd turn in a really good cash game play. It's probably, for every format, they make sense. Just an elite matchup with the Lakers, like you said. You want a piece of this game regardless of the news, I think.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with you there. That'll do it for this edition of FanDuel Friday. We're still waiting on a lot of news, so make sure you are ready to make some pivots and keep your finger on the pulse. Last night, TJ McConnell wasn't on too many radars throughout the day, and then bam, Halliburton's out, McConnell is in. He ends up 50% owned, but necessary. If you didn't have TJ McConnell, you weren't making any money last night. So important to keep your eye on the news. Kyrie Irving, Steph Curry, Jason Tatum leading the way, but there's also guys like Jeremy Grant and Rudy Gobert who could have huge impacts on this slate as well. Thank you to everyone who joined us today. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure you hit the like button, hit that notification bell, make sure you're subscribed. Thanks so much for joining us, and we will see you next week on behalf of myself and the Luuch and our amazing production team here at RotoGrinders. And of course, FanDuel, our wonderful sponsor. Thank you, FanDuel, for sponsoring the show.